Hi, Year 4, and welcome to our next chapter on our We Are Theologists journey. And we look at one of the most important pilgrimages in world religion. A pilgrimage, of course, being a journey to a sacred place taken on by members of a certain religion or on a special journey for some people. And we're going to look at one of the largest gatherings of people in the world, annual gatherings. So every year, around 3 million people go on this pilgrimage. And we're going to look at Hajj, which is a very important pilgrimage for people of the Muslim faith, of the Islamic faith. It's quite important for them, and we'll go into a bit why that is shortly. Okay, so what is Hajj? Now, Hajj, as I've said, is a very important pilgrimage to people of the Islamic faith. It's so important, in fact, that all Muslims who are able-bodied must do at least once in their lifetime. So if you can do it, you must go at least once. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Very, very important. It's about a 6-day trip. Hajj itself is only about 5 days. It takes place in the 12th month of the Islamic calendar, which is not the same as the calendar we use on a day-to-day basis in the United Kingdom or most around the world. It's dependent on the moon, hence why the date of Ramadan changes every year, and therefore the date of Hajj changes every year as well, because the movements of the moon don't match up with the calendar we use. Okay, it's one of the largest gatherings of people on earth. There's between 1.5 and 3 million people at Hajj every year. And where it takes place in the holy sites of Mecca, Mina, Arafat and Muzdalifah in the modern day Saudi Arabia. The origins of Hajj date back to around 2000 BCE. The family of the Prophet Ibrahim, his wife Hajar and son Ishmael were in the desert in Saudi Arabia. Ibrahim had left, and so Hajar and Ishmael were left to fend for themselves. After a while, his young son Ishmael began to die of thirst. Hajar, shocked at this, ran between the mountains of Marwa and Sapphire to try and find some water. Thankfully, an angel came to help Ishmael by sprouting a well of water right in the middle of the desert. This is known as the well of Zamzam and is considered really holy water. When Ibrahim returned, he promised to dedicate the site to the name of Allah and built the Kaaba. Okay, including a stone that has supposedly come from heaven. Many people of many faiths visited the Kaaba and began to build idols around it from their polytheistic religions, and this was over this period of about 1,000 years. And then in around 630 CE, the Prophet Muhammad led the first pilgrimage to the Kaaba and destroyed the idols and rededicated the site in the name of Allah or God in the Islam religion, and that is why it is such an important site. Okay, now the Kaaba itself is a building. It's like a cube. The linen around the Kaaba is decorated in gold thread, actual gold thread. It's replaced every year after the Hajj pilgrimage to keep it looking nice. It's a hugely important building for Islam. So important so that wherever you are in the world, if you're a Muslim, you must pray towards facing the Kaaba. In southeast, so if you're in Bristol, you're praying southeast, but if you were, say, somewhere like Indonesia, which has a large Islamic community, you'd be praying more to the west, because it's west from the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia. So the modern day Hajj looks a little bit different. As you can see there in the middle of this picture, there is the Kaaba, and it's in the middle of a building called the Masjid al-Haram, which is known as, it's literally translated to the Sacred Mosque, but many call it the Great Mosque. It's in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, a very holy city, so holy in fact that only Muslims may enter that city. And this building is huge. It is the second largest building in the world. It is the largest religious building in the world, but the second largest building in the world behind only the Boeing Everett airplane assembly plant in the United States. Just as a bit of comparison here, I've got Begbrook there, and you could fit the entirety of Begbrook pretty much in just that central part of the mosque. Like, this is a huge building. It is absolutely enormous, and we'll go into a bit more about what amazing things are inside. So it is with the Kaaba, and this important building in the Masjid al-Haram where Hajj begins. Now, you might see I've put a day 0 there because this is an official day of Hajj, but this is what you do on the first day where you arrive in Mecca. And it's sort of like a greeting to get you focused on God. It's called a tawaf. And the pilgrims enter the mosque and they'll circle the Kaaba 7 times anti-clockwise. Now, they'll either do that in the large opening in the middle there you can see, or you might have a look up on the balconies around the outside, and people are going around the outside there, and you'll go 7 times anti-clockwise, and it helps draw the pilgrims, draw their focus on Allah. They focus on God for their pilgrimage. After that, they then go to the Zamzam well we talked about earlier, the well of water that the angel Gabriel supposedly sprung up to save Ishmael, Ibrahim's son. And so you drink some water from the Zamzam well. The picture on the top there is where the well is now. You can see it's got the old style bucket on it, but most pilgrims, or in fact all pilgrims now, drink from water fountains like this one here, or there are bottles of the water available as well for the pilgrims to drink. It's considered very holy water. Next, the pilgrims perform a ritual called the Sa'i, and they run or walk between the hills of Safa and Marwa, just as Ibrahim's wife Hajar did as well. It's about 450 meters between each, and just to show you again the size of this building, the hills aren't outside. You might think they are outside and you have to literally run between the two hills, but no, they are enclosed, as you can see above me. They are enclosed within the Masjid al-Haram, and if you look at the picture there, you'll see it's almost like just 2 long corridors where people walk up and down, or they run sometimes as well. You can see there's a lane in the middle as well for people who aren't as able-bodied as everyone else. And so it's about 450 meters between those hills, and you've got to do that 7 times. The total journey, just under 2 miles of walking or running. In comparison, that's like you walking from out of Begbroke and off to Begbroke Green Park. Obviously it's not in the same, it's not a straight line, but doing that journey 7 times. It doesn't seem far, but if you're doing it again and again and again, it does add up quite a lot. That's 2 miles is a lot to walk. Okay. And now on the day 1, the first official day of Hajj, but the second day you'll be there. The pilgrims will travel to Mina and they'll spend a day in prayer. Now you might see Mina there. It looks large and white, and that's because it's pretty much a tent city. These are air-conditioned tents. There's around 100,000 of them, you know, enough to accommodate nearly 3 million people. They're separated into male and female tents, and many tents hold quite a lot of people. They are a lot cooler. Obviously in Saudi Arabia it does get quite hot, so all the tents are air conditioned to make sure the pilgrims, you know, can stay well and not get too overwhelmed by the extreme heat in Saudi Arabia. So after they spend their day in prayer, next the pilgrims travel to Mount Arafat, which is where the Prophet Muhammad gave his final sermon, or his last speech to the followers of Islam. That's where his last one was, and it's considered a very, very holy place for Muslims. Okay, the distance between Mina, so Mina is about like a suburb of Mecca, but it's still about 5 kilometers away from the Masjid al-Haram, and then Mount Arafat is probably the equivalent of going from Bristol to Bath. It's quite far away, and if you think there's 3 million people all going at once, it's quite a journey. When the sun sets on that day, the pilgrims then head from Arafat to Muzdalifah on the way back to Mecca. When they arrive, they say their evening prayers, and they gather pebbles for the next part of their pilgrimage before sleeping under the stars. There's no luxury air-conditioned tents here. This is all just sleeping out in the open, right on the streets of Muzdalifah, which I think has been made to be a bit more accommodating for pilgrims now, but it's still a very important part of the pilgrimage. You must get these pebbles, and you'll see why shortly. So on day 3, the next morning, the pilgrims leave Muzdalifah for Mina again, and they perform their next ritual, which is known as the Rami al-Jamra, where you throw pebbles at these pillars that represent the devil, to show they don't want to be tempted by the devil. It's like you're casting the stone. This is something else that Ibrahim did as an early story. He threw stones at the devil who was trying to tempt him to sin and do bad things. So this is a way of Muslims rejecting the temptations of the devil to do wrong. Now, the pillars used to look like what they did on the left. It was quite a thin stone pillar, but as you'd guess, with quite a thin target, when you're trying to throw a small pebble at it, you might miss, and as you can see with all the people surrounding it, you might hit someone else. So to make it safer, the government of Mecca decided to make the pillars quite long. They put them on several levels, so you can access them on several levels to throw the pebbles in a much safer way, but still part of the pilgrimage. Once the pilgrims have thrown stones at one of the pillars, the male pilgrims then shave their head to mark the completion of their Hajj. This is compulsory. Female pilgrims sometimes cut off a small length of their hair, around a couple of inches. At the end of day 3 is when Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, begins. This is not just for the pilgrims and Hajj, on their Hajj, but also for Muslims all around the world. On day 4 of the pilgrims stone all 3 pillars with 7 pebbles each, before then returning back to Mina to pray. That temptation. And on the final day, the pilgrims repeat that ritual one more time, and then they complete a final tawaf where they again circle the Kaaba 7 times anti-clockwise, as sort of a farewell tawaf. Now, if you were going to be traveling to Hajj on a pilgrimage, there are 5 things you might want to know. One of them is to wear Ihram clothing, modelled by these guys here. You might have noticed in some of the pictures that most of the pilgrims are dressed the same, and there's a reason for that. You dress in white to show purity, and you all dress the same to show equality amongst all Muslims who are completing the Hajj. And so women will wear a plain white headscarf and long dress. Only their face and hair might be covered. It's forbidden to cover your face during the Hajj. And men will wear 2 pieces of fabric, quite similar to towels, again just to show their equality in all of this. Humbleness. Now, Ihram is not just the name of the clothing, it's a state of purity. So when you're wearing these clothes, there are some certain rules you must abide by. And during the Hajj, and when you're wearing the Ihram clothing, you must not shave, cut your nails, wear perfume or use any perfumed products. You must not smoke, and you must not argue or fight as well. You're supposed to be in a state of purity before God, and these are things that are considered impure when you're wearing Ihram. There is a lot of walking in Hajj. I went onto a few travel blogs to see what their tips were, and many tips were from people who are saying wear comfortable shoes, but shoes you can take off easily, because obviously on a pilgrimage there's a lot of prayer. Muslims believe you should take your shoes off to pray, and therefore some padded sandals would be a really good idea. If there is no Ihram available for women, women may wear any clothes they like, as long as their face and hands are the only things that can be seen. So women can wear walking boots, but for the most part sandals are considered quite a good, as long as they're padded, are considered quite a good piece of footwear for the Hajj, because you can take them off quite easily as well to pray when you need to. Again, you might have seen from all this, travel light. Now, as you can see in that picture, this is actually an advert for a bag that was specifically designed for the pilgrimage. You can see he's got his a mat there to sleep on. I think that's a sleeping mat, but there's also should be a prayer mat in there as well. A bottle of water to stay hydrated. If you're going to be traveling around a lot, you don't want to carry too many things with you. So you don't want to be carrying around, several changes of clothes, and especially luckily the Ihram is quite light clothing. It's very hot in Saudi Arabia. You need to be ready for the extreme heat of the day. Some people say to bring an umbrella as well to stop the shade coming onto you, but also some things to be warm in the night, because when you're sleeping out in Muzdalifah, even though the day is very hot, the night is very, very cold. But still try and travel as light as you can with all the traveling and walking you're going to be. And 5, don't forget anything. There are some essentials I've seen after looking around what things you need to bring with you to Hajj. Don't forget your prayer rug. That's going to be quite important. There are travel-sized versions of the Quran available that you can carry in quite a small bag, as well as a guide to the Hajj pilgrimage there, and some du'as as well, which are prayers, and prayers of request and things you want to request from Allah as you are doing the Hajj. And the one I've put up here is one where it's the dua of intent, saying to Allah, I'm going to do the Hajj, I want to dedicate this time to you. That's a quick whistle stop tour of the Hajj pilgrimage. If you want to look at some other videos, then look at these ones here. They're the videos I use for a bit of my research as well. They're all there on YouTube. I'll put some websites up on the WordPress as well, and hopefully you've made some really good notes there. Don't forget you can go back and re-go over these videos or pause at any time to make any notes you want, and I look forward to seeing your travel brochures you'll be making later on this week. Thanks, Year 4. Bye.